Hi there, and welcome to our next episode of James vs. James.
Episode 11. We've done our episode on lies, and now we're going to be talking about tax law. That's sexy.
This is
fucking issue.
Well, it's exciting for me. Gets me out of bed.
Oh yeah, but it's,
there's not much out there which turns me on. I mean,
okay, fair enough. Getting into
tax law does.
We're getting into the kinks. We're getting into the stuff. Yeah, but this is that known clickbait headline that gets everyone real fucking interested about taxes. Although I guess people do get pretty on board to talk about the inheritance tax.
Sorry, the what?
The inheritance tax.
Oh, the death tax.
Yeah, this fucking debate. All right, so you were very hard up to do this debate. I'm interested to know what, I believe, quoting you said you were going to destroy me on this debate, which I'm wondering where you get that confidence from. This is not... most people are not on your side on this one.
You know I enjoy the grandstanding.
Okay.
Well, I think you'd be surprised. I think people are generally on my side on this. People who've worked hard their whole lives or believe in a legacy of the family are on my side. I don't think that's really relevant, though. I think it's more about what's going to benefit our society at large. That's number one. And number two, it's a matter of principle as well. Yeah. It's not really about how many people disagree with me or not.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm happy to be unpopular, as you know.
All right, but yeah, so going into this one, do you want to lay out what exactly this the inheritance tax is?
The death tax is basically a tax introduced largely after World War II to basically break up dynastic families.
The ones that were left.
The ones that were left
after World War One, right? Like there was they had quite a culling, to say the least.
Exactly, and it's basically a way to redistribute resources amongst in society based on taxing the estate of the dead. So the way I look at it is you work your entire life, you save up, or you build a business. I mean, there is a difference between physical labour, working and risking capital. Risking your emotional energy to building a business, or buying up property. You're taxed your entire life throughout this process. Okay, I mean, well, this is a fact. You're taxed on income you earn, and then when you die, you're taxed again on income that's already been taxed. Now, the US has a very different structural makeup than the UK with regards to its death tax system. I mean, in America, it's like $10 billion. Yeah. Anything above that gets taxed, okay? That's not where it should be. It should be higher still. But it's better than what it is in the UK.
I would disagree with that significantly.
I'll go into that in detail with you.
Sure.
But in the UK, it's currently at $325,000 per person. Okay? Anything above that is taxed 40%. So this is stuff that's already been taxed throughout your entire life. This is your nest egg. This is the fruits of your labour throughout your entire life. Again, I'm not talking about physical labour. I'm talking about everything you put your hand into for your entire life. Okay, so what it is it's not only an immoral tax, but it's actually impractical too for various reasons. The first reason is that actually it doesn't contribute much to the budget anyway, about 2%.
2% is quite a chunk.
No, it's not really.
When you're talking about the budget of the UK, if that was gone, you would have to find that money somewhere else.
It's not huge. Well, I mean, the corporations which are dodging like 40% of it. That's where you'd find.
But I'm just saying it's a chunk you.
It's not really that noticeable in the grand scheme of things. In my opinion, what it does, it basically the right use it to get votes. Okay, I think the right wing or the Conservatives are correct on the moral side of the issue too. That it's immoral to be taxed twice, but the left also use it to get votes. Let's tax these people twice, tax the rich, inheritance tax. So both sides of the political spectrum are using this issue for political purposes, not for any practical purpose. So not only is it immoral, but it's impractical. And there's also so many other issues like, if you've got a business worth $380,000, you have to sell your business in order to pay the tax man. I mean, so not only do you build up a whole business over your lifetime or several generations, you have to fire all your employees or make them more redundant. The economy loses out on a good player in the market. Businesses are valued at how well they function. So once you decide to sell it in a fire sale, you don't get the price of the business of what it's worth. So not only is it bad for the economy, it's also bad in terms of motivating people, and it's frankly immoral.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, first off, I will admit to the most that I hear about this is largely in America, and you say that it's not high enough there. I would say that it's kind of too high at that point. It does need to be. I'd say it needs to be scooched down a little bit, because in America it only applies to the top the top 0.2% of people, not even the top 1%, top 0.2% of people. So it is like this. It's this tax on the super wealthy. The function of the inheritance tax, the point of it existing, is to prevent a permanent landed gentry from ever forming again. Because if it wasn't there at all, if there was no tax at all on estates, what you would end up seeing over the course of a couple of hundred years is that the families that, one or two members of the family got lucky, they would have money to start off with that was a significant advantage beyond what any person in the 99% could expect. And that money, as soon as you have money, it's you have to be quite dumb with it to lose it. So what you would see over generations, and what we did see, and this is just historical fact, the permanent landed gentry, they didn't have to do anything. Once they had money, risking it was nothing, because to them, I'll spend 1% of my earnings on investment, and that's nothing to me, because it's just 1%. But it's like that's $1 million or 200, or 10 million or whatever, and they could just keep making money. And when you allow that to happen, that inevitably it gets to a point where it's beyond a fortune. It's beyond supplying for their needs, because how many yachts do you need? At some point, that money is then power. So you're giving this power, and we're seeing this with growing inequality with the kleptocracies and in Russia and somewhat in America now. A few powerful families, like the Waltons who own Walmart, they have so much money just as a family that a couple of families can essentially decide the flow of politics. And that's the real danger. It's not so much a matter of we've got to get that money out of the hands of the rich. They don't deserve it. It's more a point of practicality that if you just allow it, even if they're altruistic, I'm not even saying that them running the politics would necessarily definitely mean that they would be screwing over the working people. Bill Gates, rich guy, I think he's great, but if you just let them have the power over generations unearned, remember that this is a family dynasty, so the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they've received that money. If there was no inheritance tax, then they would just, after a few generations, be set for eternity, not just life, eternity, and we'll get onto the exact specifics of it, but especially in America, you can pass on a fortune that will give that child life forever.
Absolutely. The issue is, we can both agree that inequality is at extreme levels right now. Okay?
It is, yeah.
Now, so if the inheritance is the biggest problem here, then why does it contribute to only 2% of the budget? Surely if these families own so much of the economy, that when they pass it on, it should be 40% or 60% or up to the 80% for the economy. Yeah. But it's not, it's 2%. And I'll tell you why. It's because you've been seduced by this mantra that you're taxing the ultra-rich. You're not. You're taxing upper middle class people. Okay, people who generally have worked for this money, who build it up over 2 or 3 generations, who get taxed anyway at full tax rate, progressive income tax, 40% in this country, up to 45% during the Labour years. You're not talking about the 0.1% or 1%, because they have the financial resources to pay accountants to put it abroad. So actually what you do is you target the middle class and the upper middle class and not the 1%. Because if you were targeting the 1%, you'd have a huge amount of the budget from inheritance tax, which we know isn't happening. And let's face it, 325 grand in London is like lower middle class now, okay? You are taxing the lower middle class and upper middle class through this. You're not actually taxing the rich. And the rich and the big corporations get away with it as always. And the left use this as a political tool by riling up petty jealousies between people to take money from the people who are actually working for it.
Right. Well, like I said, I wasn't necessarily arguing the number. We'll talk about the number in a second. I do think that I will agree with you on that level that 300 and some thousand is probably too low, because mainly because if you're passing on the houses each of us live in are probably around that money, and that's not a matter of bragging. That's just the housing market has gone crazy. in the past couple of decades. So passing on that amount could incur massive taxes. So that's probably too low.
And would you want to sell your family home because you've got to pay income tax, pay inheritance taxes?
Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, that's immoral, surely.
No, like I said, it should probably be raised. I would say. This is where we get into the vague specifics. I'd say if you're inheriting more than, let's call it 2 million. If you're allowed to inherit 2 million without being taxed, that is frankly enough for your child. Like if you
Not really, man. Not in this day and age. You have 3 kids. That's 700 grand. I mean, again, 700 grand. If you've worked your whole life to build up assets, that's not actually that much to leave to
my point is that
in the 21st century.
My point is that it's such a leg up that those children would be set. Like if they're smart, that's enough money to, if they invest it properly, they'd have a big head start. Is my point. That it's a good solid amount where you've worked hard, you give to your kids, and like it could go up over time depending on inflation. And like I said, the moral argument I was making there was that of its existence at all. And and in America, it's looking like they're trying to get rid of it entirely, which is what my point of, if you get rid of it entirely, what you end up with an aristocracy. That's just what happens. Because if you allow families to build up this money over generations, those generations haven't earned that money each, and like they will end up with, you're talking about the low range. That's the middle class. It shouldn't apply to the middle class. Its function, its existence is to prevent a permanent landing gentry. And if that, that's the goal, you need to, set it at a number that goes up over time with inflation, that's around the point of, this is enough money for a person to theoretically live their entire life. But
remember, we live in an era where people don't respect their society or love their country anymore. So in the old days, the landed gentry after World War II, paying death tax or inheritance tax, people would pay it. The top 1% or 0.1% would pay it because they want their country to grow.
I would have to look into that. I don't imagine. Like, I cannot believe that human mentality has changed that much. I absolutely.
Oh, it has. If you look at the way Britain was structured during the wartime, it's a totally different society. They actually had a social structure back then. Now, all we want to do is take as much as we can from the system and run away. That's why people put even the bloody Queen had an offshore account on an island somewhere. I mean, it's a joke. Yeah. Right? Even if the Queen can't respect our country, then who can? Okay? So it's a different time now, okay? We can't apply 20th or 19th century rules to the 21st century, okay?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say. I mean, you're using the point of, all these people use offshore accounts to avoid this stuff. That doesn't mean the inheritance tax shouldn't exist. Like, that just means those guys should go to jail, and we should take all of their money, because that is
amen to that.
Yeah, the money that they're taking. Like, what was this recently? That Lewis Hamilton bought a jet.
I saw this. Yeah.
And literally he avoided VAT, which was millions in VAT, and for fuck's sake, dude, just pay your fucking tax. Just do this fucking
Now, the reason why I'm totally for.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the theory.
Sure.
So we can agree on that.
Yeah.
So tax is theft, but it's a necessary evil. So it is, because your income has been taken straight out of your pay packet without your consent. Now, there's tacit consent and there's social responsibility, which I'm an advocate of. So ultimately, it's something we have to do for the betterment of society, although it's technically an evil, okay? Now, the reason why I will accept normal taxation and not the death tax is because the death tax is stuff you're being taxed on which is already taxed. And that is literally theft, or beyond anything that's reasonable. And so you'll say, okay, well, but what's reasonable? People didn't earn their money, Okay, well, who are you to say who people can give their money to? Who are you to say how much is enough? We talk about wages and stuff, To some people, £500 is a lot of money. To other people who are used to different standard of living, who have maybe higher expectations in life, that's not a lot of money. And it's kind of like, how do you define is enough? How do you make that definition of what is enough, And that's why the free market people are saying, okay, well, each individual decides. Whilst I would say the more kind of progressive or big government people want to have a basic, almost limited lifestyle, which has been promoted here. And I think that when it comes to inheritance tax, it's just the petty jealousies which are fueling this, and the kind of idea that, well, how dare he live like that because I live like this, which is not really how life works.
Right. Well, like I said, you keep saying it's taxed twice. I mean, I don't care how many times it's taxed. The reason that the inheritance tax exists is a practical matter. If it did not exist, an aristocracy will form, and capitalism cannot function if or I should say democracy cannot function if 10, 20, 100 families, whatever, have the overwhelming majority of the wealth. And like this is what we're seeing right now. There was a study recently that said that when the vast majority of people agree with a certain policy, it has about a 30% chance of getting through in America. And when the vast majority of people hate that policy, it also has 30% chance of getting through. It's only the rich people whose opinion actually seems to sway public officials in terms of their actual voting record. Democracy doesn't function if powerful families like the Koch brothers and the Waltons can just buy power through, and like that's what you get. Just to be clear, I don't mind so much because like people like Elon Musk and like Bill Gates, they've made their fortune. They went from like, I mean, middle class, really, but like they went from the lower ends to like they're multi-billionaires, and you know what? It's off their own backs. Yeah. What I'm thinking about is literally a couple hundred years down the line, you're gonna have these kids that are literally just they were born into wealth. Not even 100 years, like literally like 2 generations. Like that's, and like then you'll have these kids who, because their great grandparent, but people they never met, people like who have no emotional connection to them, got lucky or got good and like did the work. They then get to be the luckiest people in the world, and just like they have no connection to the populace. They're not working, and they just have this massive advantage of money just in their pocket from birth to just do whatever they want. And I think
that's generally what's a big misconception, because there's a difference between old money and new money. People who, the reason why it's called old money is because it's kept responsibly throughout generations, invested wisely. People aren't people that go on spending sprees, right? New money is often gone within a generation or two, because people don't really respect it. As you said, they've no emotional connection to their grandfather, and it's gone. It's gone very quickly. The reason why old money persists is because it's used for productive means. So, I mean, people always talk about Paris Hilton. It's like, okay, but actually Paris Hilton has made millions from the media business. She's actually used her money kind of wisely if you look at her life. She's the archetype. She is the archetype of someone who hasn't. But actually, if you look at her business dealings, she's living in profit. She
was an heiress who was so embarrassing to her family. Her father cut her off from the majority of the inheritance.
Even more so to back my case. Then the fact is that people who hold on to the money for generations and generations and generations spend it wisely. And then to say, oh well, how dare you take this as an unfair advantage? Okay, but what if my goal in life is to provide for my line for generations to be better off and to have a good lifestyle? That's okay. I mean, who is it for someone else to say you shouldn't have that? Because I don't care if I don't know my grandson. I want him to benefit from my work. I want there to be a legacy in my family, and that's totally fine. It's natural.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like I said, it comes down to a practical matter of the when you allow wealth to accrue, like it's going to happen naturally to some degree, or anyway, because I mean, you know, we were both born into relatively like middle class families, so like we do have a bit of an advantage compared to someone living in like the inner city or just in Africa or in a country where there isn't wealth. So yeah, that like I'm not saying that has to go away entirely. You couldn't legislate that. What I'm talking about is people who are born into families where they are born into $100 million, like Donald Trump, for example. I know he says, I got a small loan of $1 million. He inherited $100 million of a business from his father. And like, he just got to do that. Like, through no necessary like business intuition of his own, just got that. And he bragged about this on...
Actually, to be honest, I looked into this, because I said last time, if Donald Trump invested the money he got from his dad, he would have made more than he had now. Okay? However, he did turn that $1 million loan into $1 billion empire, and you can't take that away from him. He then got the rest of the money he would have got anyway. Yeah. And yes, he would have been richer anyway, but that doesn't change the fact that he actually did build a very successful business and contributed a lot to the economy.
And personally went bankrupt a couple of times.
No, that's wrong. He never went personally bankrupt. His companies went bankrupt, which happen all the time, and that's just a recorrection of capitalism where companies aren't profitable enough and they die.
Whatever. I'm not turning this into a Donald Trump debate. The point is, again,
becoming a Donald Trump debate.
No, I don't want this to be that show. But the point I was trying to make there is that he went in with an overwhelming just advantage. And he bragged about this on stage. He said this like during the Republican debates, that when he phoned up a Democratic senator or a Republican senator or congressman or whatever, because he had given money to them, he was able to just get what he wanted. He knew that he could rely on them to basically do his wills, and that's what you get when you have
big, powerful governments.
When big, powerful families, money, like when you can.
So what makes you think that that creating an inheritance tax is actually going to affect these families, which affect the flow of politics? All it's going to affect is the successful wine business, which made 10 million in revenue last year. You're not going to affect the dynastic Rothschilds, or the Merrill Lynches of the world, who have $300-400 million in the bank account. Do you really think that's going to affect them?
Again, the Rothschilds have been bled of quite a lot of their money. This is one of those conspiracy theories. I'm
talking about the Rothschilds as an umbrella term, as in all the little families which come off Rothschilds, like Merrill Lynch, for example.
Sure, yeah, but it's let's not feed that fucking garbage fire of a conspiracy theory.
I mean, people look at the Rothschilds as like one small family who own like 20 trillion. That's not what the Rothschilds is.
Yeah.
It's a multitude of families across the US and Europe who own a lot of assets.
No individual Rothschild seems to have that much power. But the thing is, the point of the inheritance tax, as I keep saying, is if you don't have it, if you just allow money to accrue, just by the nature of momentum, just by physics, the money will accrue, because when you're rich, it's very hard to become poor again. As you say, Donald Trump himself did not go personally bankrupt. Any system treats rich people differently to poor people, and Donald Trump could have theoretically gone bankrupt at several points, but he's been quite lucky where he's not had to worry. Because he's a rich person, because he can pay for good lawyers. There's a different system for rich people, and when you allow money to accrue on families across time, the family members themselves, that maybe they were frugal, they weren't necessarily like spending the money like loads like that. I'm not denying that they were good with their money, but they were good with their money in that they're also able to, after a while, buy power and influence.
Okay, but James, why do you think then the very government that they influence and infiltrate is going to turn on them and take their money? I mean, for me, I do want you to answer this question. If you really believe that's the problem, and you really believe it's 0.1%, then $10 million is not a lot of money. That's upper middle class. Okay? Let's make it 80 million. You earn more than 80 million, 80% of your inheritance tax is tax. Okay? That would make a lot more logical sense. But we both know that that's not going to work, because they're just going to disappear to the Cayman Islands. So if you really believe that it's the top 0.1%, 300 grand is ridiculous, 1 million is ridiculous, 2 million is equated, it's ridiculous. Let's go for 80 million, because those are the people who really affect politics, not the millionaire down the road.
You say that, I mean, like, the 1% isn't, like, people frame it as like the 1% is like 100 million. It's no, the top 1% generally are just the millionaires and billionaires. Basically, if you feel like Bernie Sanders is coming after you, you're part of the problem. So, if you can get into a senator's fundraising dinner of 20,000 a plate, if that's something that is theoretically open to you, you have more influence than the 99% of the people out there, that's the power.
We both know that person who's worth $2 million doesn't really influence elections. It's the people who are worth tens and hundreds of millions who do. I mean, come on.
Like I said, if you can get into that senator's dinner, like at least in America, you don't necessarily have him for golf every weekend. You're not literally the billionaire, but like you have more influence than the average person, and that fundamentally erodes democracy. You can't keep having like I should clarify. The person who made their $1 million or pounds or whatever, if you have made your money, I'm not objecting to that necessarily. Like you're allowed to make your own money. What I'm against here is not the person who's worked their way up and made their business and done right, and they've made their money, and now that they're a multimillionaire. Bill Gates is fine in my books. Elon Musk is fine in my books.
Yeah, they influence elections. They influence the government.
That's
offshore accounts. That's
something that also needs to be tackled. But in terms of the debate we're having about this death tax, I'm talking about the people who were born into money, born into by no effort of their own. They are born into multi-million-dollar families, and their only incentive is to be frugal, as in I need to keep this money, as in I want to make sure that I don't get taxed, as in I need to phone up that senator and make sure that my money isn't taxed through, say, the death tax, and to protect their own families. That's their incentive structure, because they don't have any skills. They've not necessarily built themselves up as good business people. They've just inherited money, so their only incentive in life will be to get rid of the death tax and to keep their own money.
Oh, you're looking at quite an extreme of an idea of how these people live their lives. I mean, we know that wealth is directly correlated with education. We know that wealth is directly correlated with creating jobs and creating businesses. People who have money create more jobs and create more businesses and create more money, create more wealth. Sorry, create more wealth.
Please don't argue trickle down economics to me. Please tell me that you're not that far gone.
Trickle down economics does have a lot of virtue to it. It's ambiguous whether it's been successful yet.
In what way has it been better since 1980s? Like the point.
The UK was saved from permanent economic decline when Thatcher came into government. The US got out of recession when Reagan came into government.
Okay, it went immediately into recession when Reagan got into government. It has now since had booms and busts, and income inequality has boomed.
But we know the pie is bigger now, and we know the economies are bigger now. So even the poorest in 2017 is better off than the poorest in 1970, and that's a fact. So if trickle-down economics hasn't worked, then please explain that to me.
Yeah, the pie's gotten bigger, but
that's all that matters.
But real wages haven't gotten better. Adjusted for inflation,
standard of living has gotten better.
Just because you can buy an iPhone doesn't mean that the standard of living is that much better.
Well, it has, because the only reason why iPhones exist is because people have been able to invest in companies, invest in businesses, and not be charged ridiculous amounts of tax.
Yeah.
The only reason why we have so much technology is because of capitalism.
Okay.
Name me a government which has directly influenced technology in the same way that businesses have, like Microsoft has or Apple has.
Okay.
I mean, you could look at the Soviets, but I mean, you want death camps to make that happen.
Okay. We've veered off way into other. Like I've never suggested that governments are necessarily the best way to get to good technology. Yeah.
Well, this is Marx's thought, actually. I mean, Marx directly said that you need capitalism to create the technology for the future. I mean, so I'm pretty in line with not only the theoretical thinking on a socialist level, but also on a conservative level.
On the inheritance and the inheritance tax side of it, those people who are paying less tax now and supposedly investing their money, they don't have to worry about the death tax until they die, and even so, if you want to be a wealth creator, do your work in life. But once you've lived a full life, you have used a lot of public utilities. Your life has been made good partially by the fact that you live in a country with a lot of good public utilities.
Is this Obama's? You didn't build that speech.
Yeah. No, it is because
you seriously going to tell me that's?
Yes. Because the thing is, look, if you lived in an African country or an East Asian country that didn't have the infrastructure of public transportation, your employees could not come to work in your business.
James, obviously, that's why we have progressive taxation.
Yeah,
that's why we have taxation.
No, but to say,
but that's on income earned. That's not income that's already being earned. Already been earned in the past. Sorry.
Well,
that's the difference. That's the key difference.
Well, if you're passing it on in savings, then and you've been putting it into a savings account, then chances are that hasn't been taxed, at least not at the same level as it was.
I mean, if you've been, if you earn money and you earn over 100 grand, anything above 100 grand is taxed at 45%. That in itself is criminal. But the fact that you then so not only do you get taxed 45%, you get taxed an extra 40% on top of that. So you get taxed 95%.
Like I said, if you put it into a pension,
proportionally, of course.
If you put it into pension or savings, there's a lot of ways around it where you wouldn't necessarily get taxed at the same level because that money is then not counted as income. A lot of governments, as part of progressive tax schemes, they want you to save, so they'll let you put money into savings accounts, and that then reduces your taxable income. So it's not necessarily been taxed twice, and if that money has been just saved over time, then and in terms of the physical things that you've bought, in terms of like houses and businesses, they would have been taxed at different rates, or not necessarily, or if you were smart in your businesses, maybe not taxed at all, apparently. But in terms of passing that on to your kids, I mean, you're looking at it like it's like I said, the middle class. I don't think it should apply to them. I think the function of the inheritance tax, maybe it was just set at 300,000 when that was the upper echelons, but it should be up
Well, it
to...
was lower with Labour before.
Yeah, no.
I mean, Labour were literally taking from the poor and giving to the poor. So
yeah,
I mean that's classic Labour policy, but
it's like I said, it should be. You can debate about the numbers, but I mean, what you're suggesting is that it shouldn't exist at all.
No, it's not. It's not what I'm suggesting. I'm making a moral case for the principles. Okay. However, as you know, I'm a pragmatist. Just as tax is theft, you need tax for society to function. Okay.
Right.
So,
okay.
So if you're looking at inheritance tax, I think it should apply to the very, very, very top. But I'm talking people who have like 50 million. I'm not talking about the guy who has like 2 million over, a family of 5 or whatever, a family of 6. That doesn't go very far. And also just to finish that point, that business or the property you have, you'll have to sell it on and liquidate it because people's assets. People aren't cash rich. Most people, they're asset rich, and so it's an illiquid asset, right? So basically, what happens is your business is literally destroyed because of a silly inheritance tax, or your family home is sold away at a lower price, literally for inheritance tax. That in itself is immoral. So for the average millionaire, even that is unfair. But for the person who's a multi-millionaire, for the sake of necessary evils and for the sake of society and breaking up dynasties, yes. But it goes back to that age-old problem. How do you really affect the people who sway and control public policy when these are the very people who can sway and control public policy? So they're obviously going to get ways to avoid paying the tax. You're only going to get tax on the upper middle class and the reasonably rich. The people who really make the difference, they get away scot-free as usual.
Well, in terms of your point about the business has to be liquidated, I'm trying to think about like how that would even function, because you would have to be the sole private owner of that business for that to make sense.
Well, that happens a lot of the time.
I know, but like if you're smart, you would either set it up as a limited company, or you would have made it a public company if it done very well.
Why should you have to do that when it's your asset and you own it, just to be taxed and stuff? You've already been taxed.
Yeah, but you're framing it like that's the majority of businesses, that they're just privately owned, and I'm thinking that especially like small businesses. That is
the majority of businesses. There's only a few. Okay, the majority of money circulating around the economy.
Yeah.
Is in a small amount of corporations.
Yeah.
Not only corporations, but umbrella corporations.
Yeah.
Like Nestle own like Kellogg's, whatever.
Yeah.
But the majority of businesses in the country are privately owned. They're not even limited.
Yeah.
So I mean, you are literally affecting the poor, middle class, and the upper middle. That's all you're affecting here.
Okay, but apart from the occasions where it would be a family business, which considering how much disruption in the economy there is at this point, it's getting to be less and less that's a thing. You're talking about like they would necessarily want to pass on their business to their children. That's a bit of a separate thing. I don't even know what the rules would be in that case, because like if they're passing on if they then give their business to their kid before they die. Then that wouldn't count as inheritance tax.
7 years. You have to live for 7 years after.
Okay.
But in the majority of cases, I mean, that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's the destruction of the business is what's happening here.
Yeah,
and it's the destruction of your family home.
I'm just skeptical of the amount that happens if that's the case, because like again, if you're apart from like where people die young, which is is a very unfortunate situation in general, but like for the people who live long lives and live their whole lives and make the business themselves and build it up, like once you're past 60, you want to like have a idea for where this business is going, especially if you built it up for a long time. So this idea that it's just this, that it's happening every time that these people have built up businesses, they die and suddenly it's all liquidated every time. Like I don't think that's. If you're good at business, if you're good at planning, you don't have that happen because you think about this shit.
Yeah, but like, people are people, and it doesn't quite work that way. I mean, your kids might not be old enough to handle the business. They might not be old enough or responsible enough to handle the assets. It's not as simple as that.
This is where I'll have to look into the statistics of like how many of these people exactly pass on their businesses. Because I would think most people, their kids just want to do their own thing. Just because the economy is changing so much at this point.
Not really.
Like how many businesses would definitely be family businesses? This is what a chunk of your argument clearly hinges on. It is this idea of
a lot of family businesses are passed down in a quote unquote dynastic fashion. It still exists to this day.
Right.
But to research that and come back to me.
Sure.
I'm pretty solid on this though.
Okay.
But let's for argument's sake, because I want to focus on the principle here.
Sure.
Let's look at family homes. So the death tax is 325 grand. Anything above that is taxed 40%. Now, your family home is valued at 500 grand. you then have to sell that home.
Yeah.
And split up into a liquid asset form.
Yeah.
Liquid form, and give out that money amongst the kids or the kid. You can't pass on your legacy. You can't enjoy the rooms that your parents lived in, your grandparents lived in anymore. It's literally robbed from you. And remember, that home was acquired through earnings which have already been taxed, through ridiculously high mortgage rates. What's the point of paying off your mortgage if the government's going to take 40% above 300k anyway? So what you are doing, you are literally stealing from people, and you're basically taking away their legacy and their family history, which is actually kind of common. I mean, if you look at, I don't want to make this an extreme, but if you look at all the communist uprisings, people, I mean, of course, there's evil inequality, but people lost like everything. And it was kind of like a mob mentality. And this is kind of what's happening with inheritance tax in the West.
Right.
I mean, would you want to lose your family home for the sake of 40%?
Like I said, I disagree with the figure where it is, mainly because of just where the housing market has gone to the point where it's insanely inflated now to where the house that we're in right now could theoretically get taxed at that point. I should also clarify here, because a lot of people seem to fucking think that half of your stuff immediately gets taken at 300 and...
40% gets taken.
Yeah, no, after the 300...
After 325 grand.
So you get 325 grand. Like, that's... Like,
that's not really that much when it comes down to property value.
I'm just saying that people seem to think that, like, as soon as it's 326 grand, suddenly they lose 100 and some grand. Like, no. The money after that gets taxed at 40%.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, okay, maybe obviously to some people.
That's a big misunderstanding that people seem to think, oh, they'll take nearly half my shit. No, they'll take nearly half after that certain point. So
well, if your house is valued at 700 grand, then it is almost half your shit.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, if
then it'd be a quarter. But yeah. But
you said to me, okay, let's make it 2 million.
Yeah.
What if your house is worth 3 million? You have to sell it. What if it's worth 2.2 million?
Yeah.
You have to sell it.
Yeah.
So either way, you lose your family legacy. That is immoral.
Yeah, no, again, it's value. It's 200. If you have that much value, then theoretically that kid could sell that, and immediately they're basically, they or their kids then have 2 million immediately. So you have to sell your shit. Sorry, it's like
no. See, that's where we fundamentally disagree. Why should we have to sell our family's property to pay the government on stuff we've already been taxed on? James, you must see that there is some form of immorality there. That's not fair.
You seem to be really.
By the way, just on that, some people don't just value money.
Yeah.
Some people rather have a beautiful house that they've had eons and eons of generations in there rather than 2 million in the bank. It's a very shallow way of looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's maybe put it at what you're saying, 10 million. And like, okay, fine, we put it at 10 million. At that point, I would definitely say, okay, you've inherited a fucking mansion. I have no sympathy for you having to sell that mansion if that's what you got to do. Because, like, fuck, you're in the aristocracy at that point. And, like, oh no, I had to sell my shit and I only get 6 million. Woe is fucking me.
But it's not about... Sometimes it's not about the money. It's about the history of the family. Does family mean much to people on the left? In the same way that it doesn't for conservatives? Because conservatives see the family as part of your individual unit.
Right.
And we see the family as part of everything we are. Okay?
Yeah, no, I'll admit...
Is that the same on the left? I don't get the impression that it's not.
I can't speak for everyone on the left,
of course,
but I'll speak for myself, and maybe I'm a bit weird on this front, but in terms of like my great grandparents, I have no vision of connection to them. Like I never met my great grandparents. I obviously care about the family that I've met. But in the same way that I care about my friends, it's like the fact that I'm blood relatives with them is practically irrelevant to me. Like, I don't feel the need to defend them any more than my friends or whatever. And the idea of my great-great-grandson, fuck that guy. He doesn't get to profit off of what I have. Like, I care about the people in my life, and like, I would want to pass something on to my kids, and maybe give them, the fruits of my labor. But beyond that, I would not have, and grandkids, I guess, and who knows, I might live to 100.
It might be infinite life,
right? No, at that point, the debate becomes very different. I still don't think my great grandkids would be anything other than little shits to me. But because I'd be an old geezer at that point. I'd be, oh, you fucking 20-year-olds. I remember.
If we have regeneration therapy, we could have eternal youth by the time I'm 40.
Yeah, no, I'll fuck off to Mars at that point. They can do whatever they want with my shit at that point.
Go to the dictatorship colony in Mars.
Yeah, no, I'll state this now. I want to die on Mars. I want to be 106 and looking back at the 21st century having ended while sitting pretty on Mars. That's the dream. But we're getting off topic.
We're getting slightly off topic, yeah.
The idea of my descendants. Like, if I become a millionaire in my life, that's for me the immediate family members. Give them a bit of a leg up, but after that, nah. At that point, I don't I'm not fussed. So
see, for me, I see family as a line of a legacy. It's part of your identity. It's part of your family culture, and it's actually quite a natural human thing to have. And I think it's just kind of like wiping the board, which is often seen in kind of leftist kind of circles of whatever happened before doesn't matter. Whatever happens further down the line doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's almost like you lose that culture.
I'll admit that part. That's kind of a feature, not a bug to me. The idea of, because the thing is, the world is so different, century to century, especially now with technology going the way it is. That 300 years down the line, I will have culturally no reference point for my descendants. They will be so mentally different from what I am that I cannot say that I would get along with them in any kind of reasonable sense. And that's just a descriptive fact. Like, that's not even a matter of like whether I think that's okay or not. That's just what's going to happen.
Of course, it's not like unlimited. I don't look back at like 80,000 years and look like Neanderthal. He's related to me, although he probably was.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
It's not like infinite, but there's like at least a few generations that are connected, in my opinion, to someone's identity.
I'd say,
for my identity, at least.
Because to me, I would say I would put it at maximum 4 or 5 generations.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
At that point, because at that point your name is lost to history. No one who knew you was alive.
James versus James would be the internet people.
Yeah, that's our legacy. I guess that's our fucking legacy. That's not
these couple of Neanderthals. They had no idea what was coming.
Right? It's like that's the extent of it. So on a cultural level, this idea of sort of wiping the board clean a little bit and just saying, no, you have to build for yourself. You're allowed a leg up. You're because there's going to be some inequality. You can't stop that, and to a certain extent, you want that. For capitalism to work in any kind of degree, you want to have something aspirational. Even people starting out with some money, because otherwise, if everyone had to start from zero, then nothing would get done. But when you're talking, like I said, whether you put the cutoff point at 2 million or 10 million, it's arguing about the range. The existence of it should not be in debate. The fact that Trump is considering wiping it out is inviting the kind of kleptocracy that Putin has in Russia.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
But for you, it's a matter of principle. For me, it's a matter of portraying the principle for the practical aspects, right? And so for me, there's pragmatic flexibility there. I'll still maintain the principle that tax is a form of theft, and that the inheritance tax is totally theft. But it gets to a point where I think, okay, we have 100 million in the bank. Yep. Things start to change.
Right.
You don't want dynasties. But even up to 10 million, it's not really a big issue for me.
Well, this is, I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of perspective. Because, it's kind of fucked that $1 million kind of isn't much when, you've got 1 or 2 houses and you're almost over the line in some places. That's the middle class now. It's just debating the number. But, I'd say that, okay, if we're looking at this in orders of magnitude, 100,000, that's way too low. 1 million, probably too low.
Way too low.
I would say skirting the line, but fine. 10 million. At that point, come on, it's like at that point, definitely. And if you're a multi-millionaire, you don't get to let your kids just be multi-millionaires by default. But
James, even 10 million really isn't the aristocracy. It's kind of like just the rich. The aristocracy are people who have hundreds of millions. They're people who really affect. We'll use America as an example. Really affect the public policy of America. So I don't mean to pin you down and be a dick, but how do you get past the problem of the aristocracy of America, the people who own Nestle and Johnson & Johnson? How do you get past the problem of they always avoid inheritance tax, and the upper or the rich, the upper middle class, the 10 millionaires pay it? So how do you get past that? How do you expect the people who form the policy and influence it to pay?
I think it's kind of an almost lazy position of like, oh well, they don't follow it, so fuck it, don't bother.
No, it's pragmatic.
I know, but like it's saying that
it's realistic.
Like, look, the fact that they aren't following it should be incentive for us to say, let's fucking go get them. Let's do it.
Let's
harder.
go get them. But let's not get the rich or the upper class. Let's go get them.
Yeah, no.
The people who are really, really creating extreme inequality in the US.
No, it's and also like you said, like, oh, 10 million isn't that much. It's not really the aristocracy. The point of it is, it's not technically. Like I said, the point of the inheritance tax is to prevent an aristocracy from forming. And the thing is, because of just compounding interest and how money works, if you have 10 million, it's very easy within 1 or 2 generations to get to 100 million, to get to 1 billion.
Because then you get taxed. That's fine.
No, but the thing is, if you put it, like you said, at that threshold, they then try and avoid it. So you have to have it at this level where it's like, okay, you've got a good life, you're giving your kids good money. Like I said, like the first 10 million or first 5 million, the first couple of million, not taxed. It's after that. It's this, and even then, 40%, not even the majority. It's not even saying like, oh, you inherit 5 million and everything after that's taxed. It's 40%. You could still inherit, if you inherit 100 million, you could still then get, like, say that the threshold was 10 million, you're inheriting 100 million, you're only losing about 30 million there, you can still inherit 60 million.
James, but again, 10 million isn't a lot when you have 3 or 4 kids. It doesn't really amount to much after a while, especially with the price of homes. I mean, 2 or 3 million, yes, it's a lot, and does give you a significant advantage, but it's nothing that could really create a dynasty. I mean, dynasties are created really when you get to a much higher range. It's not really even the seed of a dynasty.
With that argument, you got to remember that that the average birth rate is at 2 now ish. And less for rich people. So you have to make these rules assuming that there's 1 kid, because otherwise,
actually, what we find upper middle class actually do have quite a few kids. It's the middle class who have declining kids. The very, very, very rich actually tend to have quite a few kids. It's this weird discrepancy. The very poor and the very rich and the upper class to a less extent generally have more kids. The middle class who are having less kids because they can't afford it.
Sure, I mean
that's why it comes down to money.
The point is, you have to, if you made these rules saying, oh, we assume that you have 3 kids, one, that can change at any point. You have to put it at the minimum, because at any point a rich person could just pass it on to 1 child and then immediately aristocracy within 1 or 2 generations. It may not be as much for a family of 3, but are you suggesting that, oh no, it should be 30 million, therefore each of them could theoretically each become the aristocracy? It's like, it's and like I said, like as a functional thing, you're still allowed to pass on significant amounts of money. Like it's not like I said, there is not a hard threshold here. There's not, it's not like 10 million and everything after that is taxed.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, again, it goes back to the assets not being liquid. You talk about compound interest. Most rich people don't put the money in the bank account because they know that it's just going to either get taxed, currencies inflate and deflate. Most rich people put their money in assets and properties and businesses. So actually, what you're doing is you're breaking up businesses and making people sell their homes. That to me is just, again, that to me is immoral.
Well, like I said,
I don't really think that you're not only affecting the lives of the family who own that, you're affecting all the people who work within their enterprise. They all lose their jobs once that business is gone, and that actually destroys parts of the economy. It's counterproductive in many ways.
Well, if you're talking about family businesses, you're talking about, like, generally, I don't know, painters, people who are self-employed, the odd bodega in America. It's like, if you're talking about family-run businesses, the vast majority of the small family-owned businesses, they don't have many employees per person. Like, you're describing it as if, like, these people privately own a factory, which doesn't happen statistically.
No. So a lot of businesses have at least 30, 40 people. I mean, you get a lot of the very small family businesses. Then you get the family-run businesses who've made it above the cut, really. Yeah. And they're the people who have 15 million, 20 million, 10 million, whatever. And they have 30, 40 to 100 employees. And then anything above that is generally the big boys, the corporates. Yeah. So it's a tough one.
Well, like I said, it's a matter of thresholds, and morally speaking, I don't see why anyone would have a problem with the basic principle of saying, we don't want an aristocracy to form, we've seen what happens. Like, just look at Russia right now. A few powerful families and oligarchs control everything, and that's what happens when you just let this stuff spiral,
Well, that was because they used the state to secure the assets with Russia's military. They did it by force, not through acquiring the assets through economic consent. bit different.
Well, the point is that it's unearned money. It's money that these guys have just gotten lucky into getting, and because of that, their families are now set forever, and they can just control Russian politics until there's another revolution. Basically, like that's what happens when you that that's mirrored by like the aristocracy that they had before the Russian Revolution. This stuff happens.
Russia is still a feudal society in many ways. Even its Soviet bloc era was still a feudal society. It was feudalism with the face of communism. You can't just change a country with government alone.
Right.
It comes from the ground up, the culture up. So America, keep saying bloody America. Russia's
because
always
they're so fucking similar at this point. In terms of,
no, they're not. Yeah. That's silly.
In terms of kleptocracy, they are getting on that road.
They're nothing like each other. That's complete.
When Trump staffs his entire cabinet with billionaires and millionaires who literally are his friends.
What democracy doesn't do that? Or what republic, at least, hasn't done that? All of them do that. The difference is that the average American citizen can vote. They can have, in general, semi-free and fair and free elections. There's a basic standard of living. There's a basic standard of education in America. There's
it's getting to be where
expression, freedom of thought. You don't get any of that in Russia, so you can't. That's hyperbolic.
Yeah, no, it's getting to be. There's a good chunk of America that's looking worse and worse, but that's side debate. That's a point for another day. On the inheritance tax again, just like the point of it is to prevent an aristocracy. If it even gesticulates in that area, that's the point of it existing. You know, it is to prevent the ultra rich from just creating these powerful families and just like earning money over and over again. In terms of like where that money is, like again, if you say, oh well, we don't want it to be the middle class self-employed person, you know, fine, put it above, I don't know, 10 million. At that point, after that point, like they have either, I would imagine, diversified their money or got, you know, had the business like gone public or something. If you haven't, like, yeah, people will have to adapt to the rule of the inheritance tax existing. That's you know, the people will do that. You know, it's just
what you said. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to behave in the same way and do it at the minimum. What if your business is a wine selling factory? Or if outlet or production base, whatever, and it's worth 10 million. And you have about 15-20 employees, and that's your whole business. You've never looked into different accounts. You don't have any money offshore. You may have a property or two, but your main business and the main bulk of your assets are in that company, and you have to pay inheritance tax on that. You will have to either take money away from the business and not be able to fulfill expansion plans or pay your employees that month and pay inheritance tax, or sell your business and lose everything. Everyone loses their jobs. That whole section of the economy disappears. You have to assume the minimum by your metric.
Yeah, there will always be a minimum where there's that area. I would like to assume that the majority of those people, especially since they're rich, they can reasonably expect to live a decently long life, and they can plan at some point in their 50s or 60s or whatever for what they're going to do. And businesses will have to plan, assuming that they're just from a functional perspective. If the business is as privately owned as you're suggesting, as this person built this business from the ground up, or like they I don't know, worked their way up to until they were a private owner. I don't know how often that happens, but fine. They've got this business that it's privately owned. They are the owner, and they run it, and it's run well. I would like to think that if they're that business savvy and their death is coming up, like or like they're in their 50s or whatever, and like they've built it to a level where they realize, oh, this is the point at which it will be taxed via inheritance tax. They have to think about that. I mean, they have to think about it because they are the private owner. They have to know that they'll die eventually. They have to have plans in place where it's like either they'll say, my son or daughter will take over this business, or I will put it in a trust, or I'll make it go public at that point, or something other.
People shouldn't have to do that to continue being in business. I think you underestimate how difficult it is to keep your space in the market and to keep your status in the marketplace. Most businesses are thinking about how to survive, even with 10 million revenues each year, or an asset worth of 10 million. It's still not a big player in the market. It's still hard to survive. You shouldn't have to think, oh, well, I've got tax 40% anything above. I mean, that's an extraordinary cost. That's why most people just sell the business, because actually it won't survive if we get taxed 40% above 10 million.
Well, like I said,
I mean, people can't forecast and predict in that structured sense like you assume. The world is too chaotic, and the marketplace is too competitive and cutthroat for that.
Well, like I said, if going back to the point of like, because like I said, it's past that whatever the threshold is, it's 40% after that point. So if you've got a £10 million business and you inherit it, you have to pay. Let's say it's 11 million. So like that 1 million they have to pay 40% on. That's 400,000. Yeah. I don't know, like, if they have, like, a bit of a time limit to be able to just, like, get that money to then pay for that inheritance tax.
You're assuming it's a liquid asset. It's not. You can have your business worth 10 million, but your revenue each month worth 50 grand, right? And then suddenly you have 11 million it's worth, and now so you have to be taxed at, 40% of 1 million?
Yeah, so 400,000.
400,000, you don't have that money. Or you have 50 grand in the bank. That's the revenue you get each month.
Right.
So therefore you have to sell the business to pay that inheritance tax. That is wrong.
Right. Well,
it destroys the business, ruins lives, takes away jobs, and you know what? It's the principle. At that level, it's immoral. When you got businesses worth 200 million, that's a different story.
Well, like I said, if the business is... This is the point, because like if the business is run in a certain way where it can't afford to pay the tax that is due to the society that allows it to exist because it uses public services and it exists it exists in this country and it has access to our markets, it relies on...
Because we know that inheritance tax is only, 2% of the budget, at least in the UK.
No,
in the US, it's still negligible.
Like I said,
it's based on progressive taxes. That's what funds the economy.
You agree that Starbucks should have to pay taxes here because they get they sell their products and they use our public services, they use that they exist in this country, they should pay the tax for. So on the assumption that the tax exists, a business has to, no matter what that tax is, if the business is run well, they have to understand that, okay, we have to make plans in order to pay these taxes as they exist right now. Now, if the business isn't run well enough where it can survive that, and the owner is so meat-headed where they're like, no, I own this company, I will always own this company, I don't care if I fucking die, I will not let anyone, I won't diversify, I won't run this company differently, I will definitely run it, and I don't care if it's gonna take 40%. At that point, that is just your bad business. I'm sorry.
No, come on, James. It's very easy for people who haven't run businesses to say that to people who do. I think you underestimate how difficult it is to get a business off the ground, and B, keep it running, okay? And to be able to say, okay, well, you must plan for an event that you might just die suddenly. No one can plan for that event. The thing is, with paying your taxes within an economy, in a normal sense, in the sense that you earn profit and you get taxed on your profit, or have income and you're taxed on that income, you can prepare for that. You can't prepare for suddenly, this is how the business has been running 40 years, you die, bang, 40% above the 10 million mark you must pay. No business can survive that. That's why the majority of them are sold when the owner dies, if it's a privately owned business. That is how it works, James. It's a pragmatic thing. Again, I have my principles, but my principles aren't so set in stone to the detriment of society. I can be more flexible with my principles here, which is why I'm saying at a certain extent you got to just be reasonable and say, okay, well, for the betterment of society. When it's around 10, 15, 20 million, that's not at the reasonable level. Most businesses can't survive a massive cash cost that comes like that.
Right. Well, like I said, in terms of the I would put the cap higher at around maybe more the American point of it, and at that point, the vast majority of the people who have that kind of money did not start their businesses. Like that's factually just not what's happened. The majority of those
people who have 20 million pounds.
Yeah. No, the majority of those people didn't start their businesses, certainly not from scratch. They got their money by investing. Because at a certain point, it's smarter. Like if you started a business, it's just smarter for them to have, like, if they've earned 2 million or whatever, they can then put that money into investing into something and get more money back. So like the people at that point have gained their money primarily just because
that's a huge assumption. Most millionaires living in the world today made it through their own efforts and made it from a working class background. That's a documented fact.
Right. Well,
and that's the majority of millionaires. I'm not talking about the person who's worth 100 million. The majority of people around 1 to 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Google that, guys, because I've looked into this.
Right. Okay. I'll look into that point because there is a class of people wherever you put that mark that the majority of their money was made through investment, and that's they haven't built up a business. They've just done it through, I had money, I not even invested my money, I just gave it to a firm and they invested it and I got money out of it. That is a class of people that have that level of money, and if they're going to just pass that on, that's not them like being smart with and being a contributor themselves. They've just gained from having their own wealth.
Okay, but money is basically, when you allocate money somewhere, you're basically choosing the sectors of the economy to invest in. So if you think a firm has got good investments, you've done the research on what kind of industries a firm invests in, your money is going to a company who invests in various enterprises and mine resources to make it simple, employs people. You are still contributing to the economy by putting your money in certain places. Money doesn't come out of thin air. People have to get loans for businesses, but entrepreneurs need capital, and you get that through people investing in you.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they're sitting around just chucking it around. That money goes somewhere.
Yeah, and like I said,
to productive use.
Like I said, it takes them virtually no risk, because if you have a lot of money, you can spend a small amount of it and get massive returns. Because you, like I said, not even do anything with it, just give it to a stockbroker, and if they've done good, then they give you money back. It's not through effort of their own, and it's not through skill of their own. It's just that they've gotten this money and they pass it on.
They spent it wisely. They've invested it. It doesn't matter how much of it was of their original fund. The fact is they've used that money for productive use. So to then tax that money after it's already been taxed on the profits through death tax, again, I mean, of course, practically you can look at the scales, but on principle, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, like I said, in that sense, they have not necessarily. I mean, yeah, they've made a business bigger, but they've siphoned that money off, and it's essentially created more inequality. They gain more money because they had more money to start with, and that's what the cycle is. This is what happens when you allow just wealth to develop in a cycle and keep going. It just ends up in more and more inequality. And obviously you want a certain amount of inequality, but we are reaching a level where we have to do something.
Is China more equal now than it was during the communist era?
No, I would say no. It's got less poverty, but it's not more equal. There are China has a ridiculous amount of billionaires.
Exactly, and yet 100 million people have been lifted out of poverty since the 1990s in China. It is the single most effective way of taking people out of the gutter, and it's the single most prominent event in history. I mean, we've never seen this amount of people being taken out of abject poverty to almost consumer class.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been done through capitalism. Well, I would like to call this mercantilism, a state-funded capitalism, state-influenced capitalism.
Yep, I was going to make that point.
China
is, if China was your example for the wills of capitalism, that kinda would be the best I could offer you.
What I'm saying is, it's a free market, which is kind of giving government guns and thumbs ups.
Yeah.
Right. But basically, what's happened is they've embraced a semi-free market, at least internationally a free market.
Yeah, sure.
And we've seen a huge amount of billionaires rise up from the ashes, and we've seen a huge amount of inequality, yet the quality of life for everyone is better. So if that isn't evidence for trickle-down economics working, I don't know what is.
Okay, again, that is not trickle-down economics. That wasn't because they stopped taxing the rich or whatever. That was just because they allowed people to start businesses and have their own running of things. That wasn't because the riches of the wealth trickled down. They did not. Like I said, more inequality. Those billionaires hold on to their money like a fucking
No,
viper.
they don't. They invest it in businesses and they put it in markets across the world and in China. Trickle down doesn't just relate to taxes. Trickle down relates to the investment. That's the main point of trickle down.
Right.
That people with the money who have huge amounts can invest in really ambitious projects like going to the moon. Going to Mars, like Elon Musk. And they can basically invest in risky projects that most normal people couldn't invest in. You need a few billionaires, you need a few people who are extremely wealthy to make the most ambitious and outlandish projects work.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not against billionaires existing. This is not a matter of billionaires existing. We're talking about a couple generations down the line of billionaires forming by no merit of their own. We're not talking about Elon Musk here. We're talking about people who have gained their money through being born lucky into a family, like Donald Trump, like having this huge leg up to not necessarily do anything intelligently with it. They just use it, like they've just been born into this family.
You keep saying you don't want to use Donald Trump. You don't want this to turn the Donald Trump show, but again, Donald Trump used that small loan of $1 million to great use.
And $100 million inheritance
after he made his business empire. So that's not quite accurate.
I mean, he inherited a lot of the connections, but also just like the $100 million business from his dad. Yeah, so
he had social capital, yes, but he inherited that business from his dad after he made his money with that one loan of $1 million, right? So it's not quite black and white as the left have painted it.
Yeah, well, again, that's that 1 million in 70s money would probably be at the above the threshold of what we're talking about now in terms of, after inflation. That would be what, 3 million, 4 million, something like that. So probably, right? So so him inheriting that, was over what I would consider the threshold of inheritance tax, and what especially today's inheritance tax.
But he still made $1 billion businesses. I mean, some went bankrupt, some were successful. I mean, it's a lot of smearing here with Donald Trump, which isn't quite accurate.
Yeah,
I mean, you're expected to lose in business. You're expected to have 4 or 5 bankruptcies for one success.
Right.
That's just how hard it is to make a business, which I don't think a lot of socialists or people on the left understand.
Yeah, well,
I mean, as much as I love academia,
we'll come back to Donald Trump at some point, but just the point of these people who have a huge leg up, just culturally, it creates a massive amount of not just inequality, but like you said, jealousy and anger at people who have just been born into not just wealth, not just middle class, not just pretty good, but yacht lifestyle. He was born into this lifestyle of just he never had to work a day in his life. He's had enough money to start out with where he could have just lived his entire life just left it to the managers, just left his money ticking over, making more money for him. I mean, you would say, creating jobs and doing good for the economy, sure, totally. But in terms of just if you allow this class of people to grow, of just people who don't have to work for their money and never did, and just for generations over, just become you end up with Victorian style situations where it's just these families are just looked at as they have the majority of the wealth. And that will, maybe not now, but definitely in the future, that will lead to declining living standards. We have declining living standards in the West at this point. The actual income is going down. In terms of what
we have declining
terms.
Real wages.
Yeah.
But we don't have declining living standard. There is a difference.
I would say so in America.
Because what we can get for those declined wages is higher than what you would have got in the 60s or 70s.
But track that for 20 track that trend, James. Track that trend for literally 10, 20, 30 years. If that's where the lines are going, if more and more of the economy, not just wealth, but the more and more percentage of the economy is owned by the top 1%, and they're allowed to just keep accumulating and eating the money up, then that is going to lead to less percentage and less good.
The way to fix this is not to tax the people who are working hard and what I would call the standard rich or the upper middle class. To attack them isn't the way to fix it. Back to my original point. Attack the very, very rich, the 0.1%, who really are affecting these, really are eating up the economy. But the way to do that is to actually create policy where offshore accounts are met with harsh ramifications, which isn't being done. And taxing the middle class and the upper middle class isn't the way to do that. This is a corruption problem, a government corruption problem.
Yeah,
where private sector can shake hands with the government and get what they want.
Yeah, but
that's not a free market. That is literally the definition of fascism.
Yeah. Well, like I said, do you think it's good then that Donald Trump and his government are looking to take away the inheritance tax? Do you think that that's a good thing? Because you said that there's a threshold at which I don't know if you would agree with it happening, but you maybe at least lose sympathy for the people who have 10 or 100 or whatever millions of dollars. At that point, maybe it's a bit fair to tax them on at least a bit. Let at least something, skim a little off of what they're earning at that, or what they've earned at that point, just to say something, a gesture in the direction of you shouldn't be getting all of this money that just because your dad died.
I said right at the beginning,
yeah.
And I've said throughout this debate that I'm a pragmatist first and foremost. I have principles, but those principles have to be applied within the bounds of practical application. Okay, so if you look at Donald Trump is doing exactly what the left do. He says, "Oh look, inheritance tax. This is a major issue. Let's focus on this and put a magnifying glass to this." When actually, it doesn't really affect the economy in major ways, and it only affects the upper middle class who are really being taxed for it. So what Donald Trump is doing is the exact same thing as what the left is doing on this. And if you look at Donald Trump, the way he did it, he brought out a farmer, because there's mainly about small businesses and farmers in America who get affected by the inheritance tax, right? Again, not the mega rich. He brought on a farmer. So look, this guy, I'm going to take away his death tax, okay? That farmer was one of the 0.1%. That guy he had something like 200,000 acres, something stupid. So he is doing exactly what the left are doing, just in his own manifestation in the opposite way. So yeah, I'm not supportive of what Donald Trump is doing, because I don't think it's pragmatic. I think the way to really tackle this is to change the policy. You know, if I was the president, that's what I want to do. I don't think removing inheritance tax altogether is the answer.
Okay, well, I mean, that's...
But I said this from day one, from right at the beginning.
Yeah, no, but that's all... Like, my point is like, you know, we can debate the threshold, but the principle of it existing to try and prevent an aristocracy from growing out of wealth from generations and centuries, like, to, you know, you want to promote the people who, you know, who are the children of the mega rich to do something, to make themselves useful, to make their own money, to just for a principle of individualism. You know, you want them to be not just like the continuation of a family wealth, but to want to do something just so that they have their own wealth. You know, if nothing else, just to say, okay, I've made my own wealth, you know, with the jump start from their parents or whatever, but that they've done something for themselves, so that they aren't just like, oh no, dad died, like, or, you know, mum died, now I'm getting way less than, you know, than what I had hoped. You know, like, that's one of the good things about the inheritance tax, is it's a, you know, boot up the arse to get those, you know, as you've complained about in the past, those, you know, spoiled rich kids who didn't do anything in their whole lives, to fucking think about, you know, actually making their own businesses, or like to, you know, inherit something and do something with it. You know, it's this principle of trying to make them more dynamic than just being these static families that accrue wealth because they had wealth at some point.
But I think you're characterizing even the mega rich, that they do reinvest back in the economy. It's kind of like, I mean, it gets to the point where, just as like a horrible ruling family elite would train their son up on how to rule, it's kind of like they train their son up on how to invest in businesses, how to grow the economy, how to manage your finances. They don't just sit on this money, they reinvest it into the economy. So, you know, it's not a perfect situation, but I don't think you're painting it in quite a realistic manner.
Well, like I said, this is all, like, none of this is in a vacuum. Like, obviously there's other, you know, taxes in there, and obviously, that they do, you know, try to build their own businesses. The point is that the original business, is that isn't their only source of income or their only existence. Like, that they, you know, at least with the mega rich, you know, we're talking about like the people who, like, you know, if you put the threshold at 10 million, then you're talking about the mega rich. You know, it's like, if we agree, fine, we should get away from like the bodega owner and the family who are just scraping by as business.
Well, 10 million isn't mega rich, James. When you're talking about businesses, that's not mega rich. I mean, a business, again, you're getting confused between, well, not confused, but you're getting this kind of liquid versus illiquid asset kind of mixed up here. That doesn't make you mega rich just because you have an asset worth 10 million. You have to have the cash flow to be able to manage that asset. Right. Well, so, I mean, 10 million isn't mega rich by a long stretch.
Whatever. The point is that wherever you put that threshold, fine. It's like, if you have a, fine, 50 million, 100 million, you put it somewhere where you're talking about the top 0.1% who, I don't care. Look, if you're running a 10 or 100 million pound business and you don't have some liquid assets, like you're just spending all that money to try and keep the business afloat, I don't know what to tell you.
100 million businesses, they generally have such diversified
portfolios, like at that
they have such huge revenues where it becomes doable.
Right, at that point, just like, it's just like you have to, like, it's
10 million isn't
I'm just saying amount. A threshold, you know, whatever you want to put it as, and, you know, it's like I said, I would hope that, you know, the people who have, I don't know, 50 million or whatever, like that they're working on keeping their money diversified enough to where they could actually, you know, pay the correct taxes and, you know, pay for their entire life. You know, like, you know,
we agree on that threshold principle.
Yeah.
But the way the inheritance tax is structured in the UK, it is only affecting lower middle class in London, middle class in the southeast.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
and people who would be viewed as kings of the north because they got nothing.
Well, they got running water, so yeah.
Oh god, that's fuck. The north is just like they've declared our podcast persona non grata.
That's fine. No one's a thing in the north anyway. It's fine.
Oh, we're sorry, the north. We're not.
Yeah. Well, I guess again we disagree on the principles, but I think we're going through the I don't know whether you're approaching this from a moral point of view or pragmatic point of view.
I mainly view it as a pragmatic thing because I like I said, it's a matter of just like I think aristocracies functionally harm democracies and are bad, and we should be doing something to prevent that. And the way aristocracies form is via multi-generational earnings of money that's not necessarily from actually earning it. It's just, you have money, you invest it, and yeah, it grows the economy. I'm not fighting that, but the point is that they have just gotten that money because they had that money. And if you let aristocracies form, that harms the democracy's ability to work, and you get more resentment between the classes. You get class warfare. You get Marxism. I'm looking at this from a pragmatic academic perspective of, okay, if you let families accrue this money over generations and generations, then you end up with a class structure that is doomed to massive problems.
Then we agree on that principle.
Yeah, no,
it's just that the threshold right now is put forth is politically motivated, mainly by the left.
I'll agree it's low now because of how the housing market has gone fucking crazy, and it's 325,000. It's not. Yeah, it's way too low. Because where houses are now, just by owning a house, you pay off your house, and that's an asset you own, and that puts you over the limit. That's probably bad. And it needs to be, at the very least, look at like doubling it minimum would even be like the first starting point. Like I would even say over 1 million, over 2 million, okay. Wherever you want to put it after that, sure. But it should be over 1 million. That's tripling it if we're really talking about it. It's too low.
Generally we despite how fierce this debate has turned out to be, we kind of agree on most of the principles here.
No, it's
just a matter of extent.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where a lot of it does come down to is debating about the nitty gritty details. But I'm kind of surprised that I found out it was that low. I thought that we were more on the American end of things.
You know what? So did I.
I was quite surprised. I was like, wow, seriously, only 6 figures? Jesus. All right, fine. That's a bit low. So maybe I'm not so left on that point. It was like, no, you've got a house. What are you, some fucking aristocrat? Get in your fucking box and pay the tax. Live out here like the rest of us.
Yeah.
No, I'm not that fucking bad about it. No, but it probably should be a bit higher. Let's you can shake hands on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good debate. Good debate.
Thanks for listening, guys, to this hour and a half about taxes and
please fact check us. Please tell us whether you disagree or agree with us, and please comment below. We really appreciate your contribution.
Please do. I mean, I want to not have to do so much work for the next lies episode. Like if you guys can point out if you guys want to point out wherever we've done bullshit, that's our next lies episode solved for us. Like we're just to be clear, we are lazy. This is the point of just saving us work. So if you can do that, that'd be great. And also contact us at James v James Pod on Twitter to do that, and subscribe to us on Patreon so that we can keep doing this kind of thing.
Please do.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.